My family forced me to choose. My dying mother or the birth of my first child, whom we might lose. I'm 32, and my name is James. I always thought our family was something unbreakable, a wall you could hide behind from the whole world. I was wrong. Everything started to crumble a month ago, on the very day the doctors gave my mother her diagnosis. Cancer, an aggressive form, metastases everywhere. They said she only had a few weeks left, maybe a month, in the most optimistic scenario. It was a blow I still haven't recovered from. Mom, Barbara, strong, eternally youthful, the one who always knew the answer to every question. Now she's just fading before my eyes. Sarah, my wife, and I were expecting our first child. The due date was just over a month away. We had been planning this pregnancy for nearly 2 years, and it was a very difficult journey. Sarah is my heir, my rock, and she's at her breaking point right now. A week ago, when we were with Mom at the hospital, Sarah became unwell. We rushed to the hospital. Blood. The doctors said she had preeclampsia, and the risk was very high. They warned that if they couldn't stabilize the situation, she would need an emergency C-section to save both her and the baby. They cautioned that the baby might be born severely premature, and the chances weren't great. This was the second blow, and it hit the most vulnerable spot. My future child, my Sarah, they were both in danger. I was torn apart. Every day I first drove to Sarah in another hospital, held her hand, lied that everything would be fine, even though I was terrified myself. Then I drove to Mom, sat with her, listened to her quiet whispers, caught every glance, understanding that it might be the last time. My two main women, my two worlds, and both on the verge of disappearing, and I had to be there for both. My father, Robert, and my sister, Emily, saw only Mom. From the very beginning, they made it clear that now, in this final month, I was obligated to be only with Barbara. Emily called me every hour, asking where I was, and when I answered that I was with Sarah, she would coldly snap, "Do you really think the birth of that baby is more important than your mother's last days? The baby might survive, but she won't." I tried to explain that Sarah could lose the baby, that she was scared, that she needed me like never before. My father stayed silent, but his look spoke louder than any words. He looked at me with such reproach that I felt like the most selfish person on earth. The whole family was united. Either you're with Mom or you're a traitor. 3 days ago, Sarah called me, her voice shaking. "James, the doctors say we need to prepare. If the blood pressure doesn't drop, it will be today or tomorrow. They can't wait any longer. Will you come? Please, I'm so scared." That same morning, Emily informed me that Mom had weakened significantly and had asked for the whole family to be by her side. That's when the harsh ultimatum was delivered. I was sitting in the living room, Father and Emily across from me, and me caught between two phones. "You have to choose, James," Emily said, her eyes icy. "You're either with your mother or you cut yourself out of this family forever. You know how much these last hours mean to her, having the whole family together." My father just nodded, his gaze fixed on me. I had to decide who to go to, my dying mother, to be with her in her final moments, or my wife, who could lose our baby at any moment. This isn't just a choice. It's a choice between life and death, between the past and the future, between the duty of a son and the duty of a husband and father. And my family, instead of offering support, cornered me like this. The silence in that living room was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. It didn't last long. Emily's ultimatum, "choose or you're out," was still hanging in the air like poison. I looked at my father, Robert. His face, usually expressive, was a mask of cold duty. He genuinely believed that the only honorable choice was to sit by Barbara's bedside until her very last breath. And he saw my hesitation, my divided loyalty, not as love for my wife and unborn child, but as a deep, selfish flaw. That moment felt like the end of something vital inside me, the belief that my family would ever understand what I was facing. I knew I couldn't choose my mother, not right now. Sarah was alone, scared, and possibly going into emergency delivery. If I wasn't there, if I let her go through that potential tragedy alone, I would lose her emotionally, forever. That was a different kind of death, and I couldn't bear it. But I also knew that telling Emily and Robert the first was leaving to be with Sarah would mean an immediate, brutal severance. They would shut me out, and I wouldn't be able to see my mother in her final moments at all. Panicked. I understand. I finally managed, my voice rough. You're right. Mom needs me. Of course I'll stay. I looked straight at Emily, forcing a sincerity I didn't feel. But I need to go to the apartment first, just to get some things, change clothes. I haven't been home in 2 days. Emily narrowed her eyes, always suspicious. Why? We have everything you need here. Just call Sarah and tell her you'll come by later or tomorrow. Tell her the priority is Mom. I shook my head, keeping my expression neutral, trying to be the dutiful son. No, I need some specific work files. There's a client issue I have to resolve remotely tonight, or I'll lose the account. Mom wouldn't want me to lose my job, right? It'll only take an hour. I'll be back before sunset. I lied about the work files. It was the only thing I could think of that sounded responsible and unavoidable, something my financially minded family would accept. Robert, thank God, finally spoke, his voice low. Go, James. But be quick. Don't make your mother wait. The second I was out the door and in my car, I pushed the gas pedal to the floor. I wasn't going home. I was going straight to Sarah's hospital, which was an agonizing 45-minute drive away. The entire drive was a blur of fear and guilt. I kept checking my phone. No new messages from Emily, which meant my lie had bought me time. But every block I drove away from my mother's hospice facility was a block closer to permanently damaging my relationship with my father and sister. When I arrived at Sarah's hospital room, she was pale, hooked up to monitors, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. She reached for my hand. James, thank God. They're watching the pressure constantly. They might need to move me to the OR in the morning. I need you here. I sat beside her, feeling the tension in my chest ease slightly just by being near her. I didn't tell her about the ultimatum. I just told her that Mom was resting comfortably and that I was staying here with her, no matter what, that I wouldn't leave. And for a brief, perfect moment, the world shrank down to just us, to Sarah's fragile hand in mine, and the faint, rhythmic beeping of the fetal monitor next to her bed. But the relief was fleeting. My phone buzzed. It was Emily. A text message that was less a question and more a command. It's been almost 2 hours, James. Where are you? Mom is asking for you. Don't do this. The lie was unraveling, and the clock was ticking down on 2 critical, simultaneous events. I had chosen my future, but the past was now fighting to drag me back, threatening to punish me for the choice I made. I looked at Sarah, then down at the monitors, which were suddenly showing a slight but worrying spike in her blood pressure. Everything was accelerating, and I was stuck in the middle. I knew the next call, the next message, would bring the conflict to a head. The month of slow torture had condensed into a few brutal hours. I spent the next agonizing hours trying to exist in 2 separate realities. In Sarah's hospital room, I was the supportive husband, talking softly, trying to distract her from the whirring machines and the gnawing fear that her water could break at any second. I watched the monitors like a hawk, every subtle fluctuation in her blood pressure feeling like a direct punch to my gut. But every time I stepped out into the hall to grab coffee or use the restroom, I was the terrified son, checking my phone, dreading the inevitable explosion from Emily. The initial texts from her were aggressive but controllable. Where are the files, James? Send me a photo of your desk. Mom had a rough night and keeps whispering your name. This is cruel. I responded with vague excuses. The connection is bad. The meeting is running late. The client is demanding. Each response was a tiny piece of my integrity crumbling away, but it bought me time, a commodity more precious than gold right now. The fragile piece shattered at 4 a.m. I was dozing in the chair next to Sarah's bed when my phone, set to vibrate, started buzzing violently on the tray table. The display showed Robert, father. I snatched it up, my heart slamming against my ribs, and hurried into the sterile silence of the hospital hallway. Hello? I whispered, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. My father didn't use his usual quiet, measured tone. He was yelling. a sound I hadn't heard from him since I was a teenager. It wasn't the sound of grief. It was the sound of cold, hard rage. "You goddamn liar, James. Where are you? The nurse called Emily an hour ago because your mother asked for you again. Emily drove over to your apartment, and it's empty. The keys are still on the counter. You didn't even go home." The blood drained from my face. Emily hadn't just suspected me. She had actively driven to check my story, a brazen act of emotional espionage. I realized then that their demands weren't born only from love for my mother, but from a rigid, moralistic view of duty that trumped everything else, including my own family's survival. "Dad, listen to me," I pleaded, my voice shaking. "I'm at the hospital. Sarah's condition deteriorated fast. They're getting ready for the operating room. They said it could happen any minute. I have to be here." There was a chilling pause on the line, a silence far worse than the shouting. "So you chose her," Robert said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low rumble. "You chose a baby that might not even make it over your mother's final moments. Your mother who raised you, who gave you everything." He didn't say our baby, he said a baby. The distance he put between himself and my child was like a physical blow. "I didn't choose, Dad. I'm trying to be a husband and a father. My wife is terrified. We could lose this child. And we are losing your mother, James. Now, she is slipping away." He insisted, the desperation laced with fury. "And she asked for you. She asked for her son to hold her hand. Emily and I are here. She keeps repeating your name. You can still make it, James. You can still do the right thing. But you have minutes, not hours." He laid out the options with brutal clarity, forcing the impossible choice into the present moment. "You come here right now, and you honor your mother and this family. Or you stay there and walk away from us forever. This is it. The moment of truth. You choose your mother or you choose to be an outcast." As he spoke, a nurse in blue scrubs opened Sarah's door and stepped into the hall. She looked at me with a serious, urgent expression. "Mr. Thompson, I need you to come back inside now. We're prepping Mrs. Thompson for an immediate transfer." Her blood pressure just spiked. "We're going in." My father's harsh voice was still ringing in my ear. "You have minutes." The nurse's direct command was staring me in the face. "We're going in. 2 lives. 2 operating rooms, metaphorically speaking. 2 demands on my presence that were now impossible to reconcile." I looked at the nurse, then back at the phone, where Robert was still waiting for my answer, his heavy breathing the only sound. I felt the ultimate crushing weight of the moral dilemma. Be a dutiful son to a dying mother, or be a present husband and father to a wife and child who urgently needed me to live. The month-long conflict had culminated into this one, brutal, unsalvageable moment. My father's enraged voice on the phone, "You choose your mother, or you choose to be an outcast," collided with the nurse's urgent directive. "We're going in." Time didn't just slow down. It stopped. The hallway's fluorescent lights seemed to hum louder. The scent of antiseptic became suffocating. I pressed the phone to my ear, ignoring the nurse for one desperate second. "Dad?" I croaked, the word barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I have to go." I didn't wait for his reply. I slammed the end call button, the sharp click echoing the finality of my decision. The silence from the phone was deafening, signaling the immediate end of my relationship with my family. I had consciously chosen to be the outcast. I turned to the nurse, my hands trembling. "I'm coming. What do I need to do?" The next half hour was pure, disorienting chaos. I signed papers, gave vague answers, and held Sarah's hand as they wheeled her gurney down the hall toward the operating room. She was terrified, but when she looked up at me, there was a profound sense of relief in her eyes. I was here. That look was my only solace, my justification for what I had just sacrificed. I kissed her forehead just before they rolled her past the swinging doors. "I love you. I'll be right here," I promised. I sat in the cold, windowless waiting area, pacing the same worn track in the floor. My phone was silent. No furious texts from Emily. No vengeful call from Robert. The silence was heavier than the noise, confirming the break was absolute. I was officially alone, waiting for news about my wife and child while my mother was likely taking her last breaths without me. About an hour into the wait, I slumped into a chair, overwhelmed. That's when my uncle George, my mother's younger brother, walked in. George had always been the quiet black sheep of the family, often absent from the intense family dramas, and I hadn't seen him in months. He looked tired and his eyes were red-rimmed. "James," he said quietly, pulling up a chair across from me. "Emily told me what's happening here, and what's happening at the hospice." I looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "She probably told you I'm a monster." George sighed, a sound of deep exhaustion. "Emily and Robert see everything in black and white. Duty and betrayal. They truly believe they're doing what Mom wants." He leaned closer, and his voice dropped to a conspiratorial level. "But you need to know the whole story, James. The one they're not telling anyone." He paused, looking around the empty waiting room, making sure we were truly alone. "Your mother made a choice 3 weeks ago. She told me to keep it secret. After the diagnosis, when they gave her the timeline, she knew it overlapped with Sarah's due date. She also knew about Sarah's difficult pregnancy and the risk." I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. George continued, his eyes earnest and sad. "She called me to her room. She was lucid, completely herself. She made me promise. She said that if it came down to a choice, if her final moments coincided with the birth, especially an emergency birth, she wanted you to be with Sarah. She made me swear to her that I would tell you that her final wish was for you to be a present father. She said, 'My time is done. James needs to focus on the life that is just beginning, not the one that is ending.'" The air rushed out of my lungs. All this time, all the guilt, the agonizing conflict, the complete rupture with my father and sister, it had all been based on a false premise. Robert and Emily had weaponized her final days, turning her death into a tool of control, insisting on a duty that directly contradicted my mother's own final, selfless wish. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the appearance of perfect familial devotion, regardless of the cost to me. I gripped the arms of the chair, rage and crushing relief fighting for dominance. "Why didn't you tell me sooner, George? Why did you wait until now?" "I couldn't," he whispered, shaking his head. "She made me swear, and I tried to get them to see reason, to talk to you, but they wouldn't listen. They were too far gone in their certainty. I only came here now because I knew they'd driven you away, and I couldn't let you live with this guilt for the rest of your life, believing you betrayed her when you were actually honoring her deepest desire." The door to the operating room swung open, and the surgeon, masked and gowned, stepped out. He walked toward me, pulling down his mask. My entire focus snapped back to the present. The secret was revealed, the justification was found, but the ultimate outcome, the life or death of my wife and child, was still a terrifying unknown. The sight of the surgeon, his scrubs speckled with something dark, erased all thoughts of George, Emily, and Robert. The revelation of my mother's true final wish, that I choose Sarah, instantly shifted the agonizing guilt into a righteous shield, but it couldn't protect me from the fear of this moment. All that mattered was the man walking towards me, holding the answer to my life or death. I stood up, George's presence a solid weight beside me. "How are they, Sarah? The baby?" The surgeon, a man named Dr. Hayes, looked tired but offered a small, professional smile. "They're stable, James. We were successful. We managed to stabilize Sarah's pressure just as we began the C-section. She's exhausted, but she's going to be fine. She's in recovery now." I sagged against the back of the chair, a choked, involuntary sob escaping my throat. Relief, so intense it was physical pain, washed over me. Sarah was safe. "And the baby?" I managed to ask, my voice raw. "It's a boy," Dr. Hayes said softly. "He's tiny, very premature, but he fought hard. He's breathing on his own, which is a miracle, honestly. We've taken him to the NICU. He has a tough road ahead, and we'll be watching him constantly. But he is here. He's a fighter. A fighter. My son." I couldn't speak, just nodded frantically, wiping the unexpected tears from my face. George put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of quiet, powerful support. "Go to Sarah," he murmured. "I'll wait here." I found Sarah in the recovery room, pale but awake. Seeing her alive, intact, was like finding a way back to myself. I held her hand, unable to articulate the hell I had just navigated. I didn't mention my mother, my family, or the brutal choice I'd made. Not yet. We just focused on the simple, unbelievable fact that we had survived. It wasn't until the next afternoon, when I finally saw my son. A tiny, fragile being attached to tubes and monitors, yet perfect, that the second, inevitable wave of grief hit. The sheer, vibrant reality of this new life made the absence of the old life unbearable. When I finally checked my phone, hours later, the single message was from George. "Barbara passed away an hour ago, peacefully. Robert and Emily are devastated." The climax was over. The two events, life and death, had run their simultaneous courses. I had chosen the beginning, and I missed the ending. I attended the funeral alone. I stood far back from the gravesite. I watched Robert's shoulders shake with grief and saw Emily's face, tight with bitter sadness, scanning the crowd. She saw me. Our eyes met for one long, cold moment. There was no rage in her eyes now, only the deep, isolating certainty of my betrayal. The truth about Mom's wish was buried with her, a secret only George and I shared. Revealing it would have shattered Robert's and Emily's entire reality and offered them no solace, only the knowledge that they had failed to honor their mother's final, generous act. I kept the secret. I realized then that my choice was never just about being in one hospital or the other. It was about choosing which future I was willing to live with. The crippling guilt of abandoning my wife and child when they needed me most, or the profound, enduring pain of being estranged from my original family. I chose the latter. My mother, in her dying clarity, had given me permission to choose life, and I had taken it. But the price was permanent expulsion. A month ago, I had a mother, a father, and a sister. Now I have a wife, a fragile newborn son, and a truth that only I carry. My life is full, but the edges are jagged, carved by that impossible choice. I look at my son, struggling bravely for every breath in the NICU, and I know I made the right choice for him. But every time I see a missed call from an unknown number, I wonder if the silence from my old family will last forever, and if the cost of my son's life was the death of my past. The irony is not lost on me. I honored my mother's true desire by fulfilling my duty as a father, but in doing so, I became exactly what my father and sister believe: a man who betrayed his family. And there's no way back from that.